The film begins with a spaceship landing on a planet, this planet being Earth in ancient times. The collision shocks the wildlife in the area, and the ship ends up landing in the middle of a lake. Two humanoid figures in advanced spacesuits emerge from the impact. One of them helps his companion out of the water, and as he faints, he has brief flashes of the past. Upon waking up, the astronaut realizes that his companion has died due to a severe wound to his chest. In the distance, he hears a robotic call, being a computer stranded in the lake. The man saves the machine and asks in an unknown language for information about the planet they have landed on. He also inquires about the location of other ships, but the computer informs him that there are no records of nearby vessels. After his disappointment, the man prepares for the computer to download and transfer to him a series of data about the planet, its civilizations, species, languages, and culture, something difficult and painful for the man to absorb. After that, he seems to gain a new spirit and practices his aim with a destructive weapon he managed to survive the crash with. At dusk, he makes a grave for his deceased colleague. The new mission of the outsider is to survive in the unknown area, a vast forest, using only his weapon. In his search, he finds the lifeless body of a whale next to a destroyed and abandoned village with signs of an attack by something non-human. Noticing that he is being watched, the outsider flees, but is intercepted by a knight who knocks him out and causes his weapon to be lost in the river. While he is unconscious, the outsider is taken hostage to a nearby Viking village that is surrounded by a wooden wall. In a great hall, the young Freya and her father, King Hrothgar, are engaged in a sword fight. Freya tells her father that she will not marry her suitor Wulfric, a contender for the king's throne. The battle ends when Freya's father cuts her shoulder, then he decides to heal her. Wulfric appears, but his pedantic attitude only makes Freya dislike him and leave. Hrothgar and Wulfric discuss how a nearby village has been destroyed, and Wulfric tells him that, during his inspection, they managed to capture a man, but he apparently does not belong to any known village. Their hostage, the astronaut, is displayed in front of the villagers, who are amazed and mock his clothing. Wulfric takes the man to a cabin to interrogate him. He asks the outsider his name, and he says his name is Kynan. Kynan lies to them, saying he is from an island to the north and that he is actually there hunting dragons, but the men do not believe him and think he was the one who attacked the nearby village. Kynan tries to escape, but the Vikings are too strong for him. After being captured, Kynan attempts to escape using a flaming iron bar, but just before he succeeds, Freya appears to attend to him, as Wulfric requested. Hrothgar asks Wulfric about the outsider at dusk, but Wulfric tells him that he refuses to cooperate. Hrothgar tells him that Gunnar, the chief of the destroyed village, must be sought and explains that they weren't the ones who attacked him. Wulfric hesitates about this since he harbors resentment against Gunnar for killing his father, the former king of the village, but Hrothgar explains that this happened because his father was reckless, and he does not desire the same fate for him. Going back to Freya and Kynan, she asks him if he was the one who attacked the village, but he denies it. Before proceeding, Kynan frees himself and attacks Freya and her guard, defeating him. Kynan attempts to flee in the middle of the night, and his plan would have worked if it weren't for the alarm starting to sound, announcing an enemy attack. All the Vikings rush into action, thinking it is Gunnar seeking revenge. They are surprised to see that there is no one outside, only to realize that the enemy is already inside the village. An unknown enemy begins a massacre and fire, a tentacled creature hiding in the stables. Kynan begins to pursue the beast, but his guard starts chasing him. The guard is then killed by the mysterious monster, which takes him to the edge of the wooden wall. Kynan calls the creature Morwen, the true dragon he was looking for. Before going after it, the Vikings find Kynan, only to tie him to a stone. There, Kynan has flashes of memory of Morwen attacking his world and lamenting the loss of his people. The next day, a poor boy from the village offers some bread to Kynan, which he accepts with suspicion. The men of the village try to figure out who could have caused the invasion the night before. They take Kynan to Hrothgar, asking him about the supposed dragon he is hunting. Kynan explains to them that the so-called Morwen also attacked his people, and that it attracts beings with lights and then kills them. He confesses that he brought the Morwen to the village, but just before Kynan is executed, Hrothgar intercedes for him, claiming that he does not believe much in his story. Kynan realizes that they will hunt Morwen, then asks Hrothgar to go with them. The Vikings give him a horse, and Freya punches him for the earlier attack. Only then do they leave the village to look for the beast. A blacksmith named Boromir offers Kynan a mead, but Kynan spits it out. Hrothgar strikes up a conversation with Kynan, and he tells the king that if they do not stop Morwen, the village will face the same fate as his home. Wulfric announces several bodies in the area and proposes forming expedition groups, but Kynan does not consider this plan viable, preferring to stick together. However, Hrothgar prefers to go in pairs. During the investigation, a decapitated horse's head falls from above onto Hrothgar and Boromir. Another pair of men finds burned bodies outside a cave, and soon they find something dangerous. After hearing the terror-filled screams of the men in the cave, everyone gathers to enter. They find a bear and start a fight, and such an animal is very resilient and fierce. During the struggle, Kynan delivers the final blow with his sword. Hrothgar decides to spare Kanan's life after defeating the bear, granting him his freedom. The village celebrates victory over the bear with a feast. In the middle of the celebration, Kynan appears again, and this time with the clothes of the people. To his surprise, everyone welcomes him warmly, and he goes to eat with Hrothgar. During dinner, the boy who gave bread to Kynan appears, and Kynan decides to return the favor by lending him the powerful sword that killed the bear, on the condition that he must tell him his name, to which the boy responds only, Eric. Hrothgar explains to Kynan that Eric's parents have died, and they are taking care of him. Wulfric decides to start a game called Shields, and challenges Kynan. Several men make a square course using only their shields, and the competitors must climb on them and then crawl forward. After a series of tumbles, Kynan falls on Boromir, but Wulfric, instead of mocking, helps him up, now trusting him more as the people applaud their new member. After leaving the Great Hall, Kynan encounters Freya, who thanks him for helping her father in the expedition. Kynan explains to Freya that it was not the bear who killed his people, but Morwen, and that it will return at any moment. Suddenly, Gunnar's Viking group launches an enemy attack, breaking into the village. There is a clash of swords between the two sides, and Kynan and Freya fight and kill some enemies each. Hrothgar confronts Gunnar, who charges at him, knocking the king to the ground. Before killing him, Kynan appears to save Hrothgar, but just as Gunnar is recovering to counterattack, his men knock him down and take him away, claiming they lost, and it is time for a retreat. Gunnar's group leaves, but not without Gunnar cursing Hrothgar, accusing him of being the killer of his family and people. The village tries to recover after the attack, and Freya explains to Kynan who Gunnar is. Years ago, Wulfric's father wanted to unite all the villages to plan an attack against the Franks, but Gunnar didn't show up, feeling that as a betrayal, so both villages have reasons to hate each other. Gunnar's group plans their subsequent attacks on Wulfric and his people. One of them separates from the group to urinate, and he is attacked by Morwen hiding in the lake. Gunnar's men start falling one by one, believing it is a surprise attack from Wulfric. Gunnar finds himself alone in front of the beast, deciding to attack it fearlessly. In the village, some of Gunnar's men appear screaming and surrendering, wanting to enter to avoid death. However, Wulfric thinks it's a trap, so he readies his archers to shoot. Among the men appears Gunnar, who survived Morwen and now asks for help. The archers fire, killing some men, except Gunnar. Kynan urges them to stop shooting, and after that, he opens the village gates for the enemies to enter. Just as Wulfric is about to strike Gunnar, they all see a series of blue lights capturing a man in the forest and then devouring him. The blue lights turn red, revealing the savage Morwen, which flees into the forest. Now everyone knows about the existence of the creature. There is friction between Wulfric and Gunnar in the Great Hall, with the latter arguing that hitting Morwen was like hitting a stone wall. Kynan tells them that fighting Morwen in the open field is impossible, so they must devise a trap. Wulfric does not trust the plan and says that Kynan is not one of them, so they should not listen to him. However, Kynan explodes, saying that Wulfric is wrong, just as he was about the supposed attacks by the bear and Gunnar. The two try to fight, but Hrothgar separates them. The king favors Kynan's plan and says that what he advises will be done. The next day, they decide to build a trap at the village entrance, and Kynan requests flammable materials for some reason. They dig a pit several meters deep, which they hide as if it were just another cabin. Inside, several posts are driven into the ground, and the place is filled with flammable liquid. After everything is ready, Hrothgar offers Kynan a position in the village, making him one of theirs. Meanwhile, one of the victims from the previous night awakens surrounded by corpses, only to be finished off by Morwen. In Freya's cabin, she and Kynan share a bowl of stew, and it is there that Kynan has something to confess. His people, Kynan's society, are actually conquerors of worlds. Upon arriving in Morwen's territory, they exterminated its species with bombs. The remaining Morwens were hunted down to take control of the land. It turns out that Kynan was part of a group of space colonizers, and in exchange for the power to eradicate the life of the Morwens, he and his family were granted a place on the planet where they could reside. Sometime after the conquest, Kynan had to depart on a new mission, but there he learned that one of the Morwens had survived and was hiding in the ship's ventilation, the same Morwen that killed the remaining population. Kynan blames himself for this oversight, but Freya tells him he shouldn't be so hard on himself. In the same manner, she gives him her family sword to fight better. Everyone prepares for the trap, now with Gunnar's help. The warriors open the gates, and Wulfric and Kynan go out, hoping the beast will appear. They cannot see much, and as nothing is happening, Kynan throws a torch into the forest, only to realize that the Morwen is right in front of them. Out of nowhere, the village priest appears praying for the beast to leave, claiming to be an emissary of Lucifer. He is brutally killed immediately, then Kynan and Wulfric begin to run, passing through the trap and using the shields as a platform to escape to the other side. Even so, Wulfric falls into the liquid along with the beast. To make matters worse, the warriors close the doors, leaving the two inside. Just before the archers unleash their flaming arrows, Kynan offers help to Wulfric and manages to rescue him through an external opening in time to avoid the explosion. While everyone is surprised by the explosion, a new and smaller Morwen appears from behind, in the area where the women are hiding. To protect everyone, Freya decides to attack. Her father comes to her aid, but a brief struggle against the beast leaves him defenseless. As if that weren't enough, the first Morwen reappears from the fire, angrier than ever. Wulfric and Kynan decide to attack together, but they are no match for the monster. Gunnar decides to help, but is decapitated in a flash by the first Morwen, which then flees. Eric appears to tell Kynan that there is a second Morwen, so they rush to help Freya. Unfortunately, she is found holding her father's lifeless body, which perished in the battle. The whole people leave the village the next day, fearing another attack. Eric tells Kynan that he wants to stay with him in the village, but Kynan tells him that the place is no longer safe, so he should leave with the others by boat. He promises the boy they will meet again, and then says goodbye. Kynan finds Wulfric, although he is depressed by the outcome. To the point of not feeling worthy of the throne, Kynan tells him they must fight the monster together. They both recruit a small group of men to descend into the common well. Although the idea is crazy, it is the only way to find the Morwen's hideout. Kynan asks Boromir for new weapons, this time with more substantial materials that he will bring. Kynan goes with Freya and Wulfric to the lake where his ship crashed to recover some materials by diving. While he manages to bring some things to the surface, Kynan is surprised by a Morwen under the lake. When he reaches the surface, he sees that the boat they were in has been destroyed, finding only Wulfric, but no sign of Freya. Using a piece of metal from the ship, Boromir manages to forge a new sword, bigger and stronger than any other. Already prepared, Kynan descends into the well until he finds an underground cave. He waits for the others, and they begin to advance. Freya wakes up terrified, finding herself in the monster's nest with corpses. Trying to escape, one of the beasts finds her. Before it can attack, the beast detects intruders, then abandons Freya to go after them. Kanan's group ends up in a cave with access to a lava floor. Soon they are attacked, but following the beast, they manage to find the Morwen's lair. The group attacks and injures the smaller specimen, but with heavy losses, including Boromir's death. Freya manages to get up, and they call for each other. Just before entering a dark place, Freya detects danger, and the injured Morwen appears, unable to see her and now aided only by sound. When they meet, both the men and Freya make enough noise for the beast to attack, and Freya barely has enough time to dodge the blow. To reach her friends, Freya has to go through a hole, but it is too small for her. So, with no other option, and in a desperate act, they hand the sword to Freya, who instantly kills the creature. They regroup, but far from having a warm reunion, they all look horrified at the number of bodies in the cave. Hearing something approaching, they leave, and the last Morwen sees his son's body and furiously goes after the warriors. They all reach the end of a waterfall on a mountain next to a cliff. They try to escape, but the walls are too slippery to climb. Even so, they try to do so, but Freya falls to be rescued by Kanan. Meanwhile, Wulfric is attacked by the elder Morwen, and in a desperate act, he manages to wound it in the face. Freya keeps steady, but the Morwen throws Wulfric's body towards Kanan, leaving him alone in the fight. He re-enters the cave with his sword and manages to cut off a tentacle of the beast, although he does not hit it directly. Following the trail of blood, Kanan is attacked and thrown to the ground. Upon rising, he is surprised, and just before being struck from behind by the beast, Freya appears attacking the creature, giving Kanan the perfect moment to advance. However, the beast manages to drag him to the edge of the cliff, and while Freya holds Kanan, he is squeezed by the Morwen. After struggling, Kanan manages to grab his sword and cuts the beast's hand, causing it to fall into the void. They both return to the dying Wulfric, who asks if the beast is finally dead. They say yes. Wulfric offers Kanan the medallion that makes him king, lamenting not having established a good friendship with him. Kanan corrects Wulfric, saying they are friends, and it is then he dies. Kanan and Freya climb the cliff, finding Eric and the rest of the village in boats down below in the distance. The two share a kiss, but despite everything, Kanan says goodbye to Freya, telling her he has something more to do. She worries because she knows Kanan may never return. He, in fact, goes back to the wreckage of his ship, revealing that his wife was in stasis during the journey, and that after the crash, her capsule broke, killing her. Kanan says goodbye and returns to his computer, which signals for his comrades to start looking for him. Freya watches from the bushes as Kanan destroys the computer, letting go of his only chance to return home. In the end, Freya narrates how Wulfric and Hrothgar were buried, giving the highest Viking honors for the dignity they had, and that Kanan, once a stranger to the people, became their new king, with Freya becoming his new wife and Eric, his adopted son. Freya concludes with the sacrifice Kanan made, how he was sent by the gods, but at the moment of his departure, chose to stay with them.